Part 1. Why truly intelligent people are often rejected by society. Have you ever met someone so sharp, so perceptive, that they seem to operate on a completely different level, only to realize they're actually kind of alone? Maybe you've even felt that way yourself. It's not that they or you aren't likable. It's that being truly intelligent often comes with an unexpected price: social rejection. This isn't just some modern observation. Way back in the 19th century, philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer noticed it too. He believed that high intelligence wasn't always rewarded. It was often ignored, misunderstood, or even resented. Why? Because people don't always know what to do with someone who sees the world differently. Let's unpack that. Schopenhauer argued that the more intelligent a person is, the less they fit into society's usual rhythms. It's not just about being smart in a classroom sense. It's about thinking deeply, questioning things others accept without a second thought, and refusing to settle for shallow answers. Now here's the thing. Most people live their lives on a sort of surface level. That's not a bad thing. Life is busy and we all need a little simplicity. But when you've got someone constantly digging deeper, challenging norms, or even pointing out uncomfortable truths, that's not always welcomed. Schopenhauer called this a kind of intellectual solitude, not because the intelligent choose to be isolated, but because the way they think naturally separates them. They see the flaws in things others celebrate. They're more sensitive to contradictions, more attuned to nuance. And when most of the world thrives on quick opinions and group consensus, that depth can become inconvenient. Let's be real. Society tends to reward the familiar, not the exceptional. We celebrate innovation, sure, but only when it's easy to digest. When intelligence shows up in a raw, unfiltered form, it can come off as arrogant, awkward, or even threatening. Think about school for a second. The kid who raises their hand with a complex question isn't always the teacher's favorite. Sometimes they're seen as showing off. Later in life, that same kid might grow up to be someone who challenges the status quo at work. And instead of being promoted, they're sidelined. Not because they're wrong, but because they're too much for the system to handle. Schopenhauer believed that the truly intelligent often feel this rejection from early on. They notice they don't laugh at the same jokes, they don't enjoy the same conversations, and they're constantly thinking about things others find irrelevant or even depressing. While some people are chatting about weekend plans, the intelligent one might be wondering why we even exist in the first place. And let's be honest, that kind of existential energy doesn't always land well at brunch. So what happens? Many highly intelligent people learn to withdraw, not out of arrogance, but out of self-preservation. They stop trying to fit in, stop explaining themselves, and start creating space where they can just be. And while that might look like isolation from the outside, on the inside, it's often a necessary reset. But here's where it gets tricky. That withdrawal can turn into bitterness. When you feel like no one gets you, when your ideas are constantly dismissed or misunderstood, it's easy to start thinking the world is against you. Schopenhauer warns against this trap. He believed that bitterness kills creativity. Instead of becoming cynical, he urged intelligent people to use their solitude constructively, because solitude, when embraced rather than feared, becomes power. It's in those quiet, solitary moments that ideas are born, that art is made, that new ways of thinking are developed. Think of all the greatest minds in history: Einstein, Tesla, Da Vinci. None of them were exactly people persons. They needed that space, that silence, to think big. Schopenhauer saw solitude not as a punishment, but as a gift, the playground of the mind. It's the one place where the intelligent can fully explore their ideas without interruption, without judgment, without compromise. But he also knew the cost. Human beings are wired for connection. No matter how smart you are, you still crave to be seen, understood, and accepted. So when society repeatedly rejects or misunderstands you, it hits deep. It's not just annoying, it's painful. This is where the tension lives, between the desire to connect and the need to stay true to your mind, between wanting to belong and knowing you were never meant to blend in. So what's the solution? According to Schopenhauer, it's not about changing who you are, it's about changing your expectations. You might not find deep understanding in the majority, but you can find your niche. That small group of people who think like you, feel like you, question the world like you. It might be small, it might take time to find, but it's real. And in today's world, with the internet, forums, online communities, and global conversations happening 24/7, finding your niche has never been more possible. You no longer need to be limited by geography. You can be the only one in your town thinking the way you do and still connect with someone halfway across the globe who gets it. The key is knowing that you're not broken. You're just operating on a different frequency. And while not everyone can hear that signal, those who can will hear it loud and clear. So if you've ever felt rejected because of how deeply you think, how much you question, how little you relate to surface-level stuff, remember this: you're not alone. You're part of a quiet, powerful minority. And history shows us time and again, that minority is where the real change starts. Not in the crowd, but just outside of it. Part 2, the cost of seeing too much and the strength in standing apart. Let's go deeper. You've probably heard the phrase, ignorance is bliss. And while it might sound like a cliche, Schopenhauer would argue there's a painful truth in it. Because the more aware you are, the harder it gets to live in peace. When you're highly intelligent, you don't just see what's happening, you see through it. You notice the contradictions in people's values, the flaws in society's systems, and the illusion in so many of the things others take for granted. And after a while, it's exhausting. It's like watching a puppet show when you can see the strings. Sure, the crowd might be laughing and enjoying the performance, but you're focused on the wires, the mechanism, the person pulling the levers. You can't unsee it. And here's where things get lonely. When you bring that level of awareness into conversations, it can come off as negative or overly critical. You're not trying to be difficult, you're just being honest. But the truth? Most people don't want honesty that cuts too deep. They want comfort, not complexity. So what happens? You're told to lighten up, to stop overthinking, or just enjoy life. That kind of feedback, repeated over and over, sends a message: your depth is a problem. So many intelligent people start shrinking themselves just to be accepted. They dumb down their thoughts, avoid sensitive topics, keep their real opinions to themselves, all to avoid the discomfort of being misunderstood. Here's the catch. When you start doing that, a part of you dies inside. You're no longer being rejected for who you are. You're rejecting yourself before the world gets a chance to. Schopenhauer saw this pattern clearly, and he warned against it. He believed that suppressing your intellect for the sake of social acceptance was a slow form of self-erasure. It might bring temporary relief, but in the long run, it leads to resentment, self-doubt, and even depression. So what's the alternative? Instead of hiding your intelligence, own it, but direct it wisely. Not everyone deserves full access to your mind. Not every conversation needs to be a philosophical debate. You can learn to read the room without changing who you are. It's about choosing where and when to express your depth and who is actually capable of appreciating it. This isn't arrogance, it's strategic. You wouldn't serve a 5-course meal to someone who's only hungry for fast food, right? Find the spaces that can hold what you bring. And while we're on that topic, let's talk about value. One of the biggest challenges UN7 people face is the sense that their ideas aren't being used or appreciated. They see better solutions, more efficient paths, deeper truths, and yet the world just shrugs. That disconnect can make you feel like your mind is wasted. But here's the perspective shift. Your value isn't determined by who gets you. It's determined by what you do with what you've been given. You're not here to convince everyone. You're not here to be universally loved. You're here to build, to create, to improve, even if it's on a small scale. You might be the person who rethinks an entire system, or the one who quietly mentors someone who goes on to do amazing things. Either way, you're having impact, even if it's not always visible right away. Think about this. The most groundbreaking ideas in history didn't start in boardrooms or focus groups. They started in quiet rooms, often with one person, thinking differently from the rest of the world. Innovation rarely comes from the center of the crowd, it comes from the edges. That's the power of standing apart. And yet the loneliness is real. So what do you do with it? You learn to befriend solitude, not fear it. Solitude isn't the same as isolation. Isolation feels empty. Solitude, when chosen, can feel expansive. It gives you the mental space to go deeper, to connect ideas, to understand yourself in ways that noise and distraction never allow. Many of the most intelligent people throughout history made peace with being alone, not as a weakness, but as a creative necessity. In solitude, you regain your sense of purpose. You remember why you think differently. You stop trying to dilute yourself just to be accepted. But let's be real, humans aren't meant to be alone forever. Even the most introspective minds crave connection. The key is finding the right kind of connection. This is where the idea of the niche comes in. When you accept that you're not going to resonate with the majority, you stop wasting energy trying to. Instead, you go smaller, but deeper. You find the few people who don't just tolerate your mind, but value it. They may be rare, but they exist. And with the tools we have today, online communities, niche platforms, interest-based groups, it's never been easier to find them. You don't need 1 million followers, you need a few real ones. That's where real belonging starts. Here's the twist. Once you stop seeking mass approval, you actually become more powerful. Why? Because you're no longer playing by the rules of popularity. You're focused on truth, on purpose, on building something that lasts. This doesn't mean you won't still feel lonely sometimes, but that loneliness won't control you. It won't silence you. Because now you understand. It's part of the price of thinking clearly in a noisy world. You've chosen the harder path, but you've also chosen the more meaningful one. And that brings us to one of Schopenhauer's most important points. The goal of a thoughtful life isn't to escape pain, it's to use it, to turn discomfort into insight, to turn rejection into clarity, to turn solitude into strength. That's what truly intelligent people do, not because they're better than others, but because they simply can't live any other way. Part 3. Embracing intelligence in a world that might never understand you. So now we've established a few things. If you're highly intelligent, the world might not get you. You might feel isolated, misunderstood, even rejected. But here's the truth. Schopenhauer tried to drill into our heads. You don't exist to be understood. You exist to be real. That means you stop bending yourself to fit spaces that were never designed for you. You stop watering yourself down just to make others comfortable. And instead, you start building a life where your mind is an asset, not a burden. Let's talk about what that looks like. It starts with purpose, not external goals, not career titles or social approval, but internal alignment. You have to ask yourself, what is my role as someone who sees the world differently? And the answer isn't to change people's minds overnight. It's to offer perspective, to challenge lazy thinking, to question what everyone else accepts. Sometimes that's uncomfortable, for you and for them. But over time, it's what helps shape progress. And no, the rewards may not come fast, or ever. You might not get applause. You might even be criticized or ignored. But if your goal is truth over comfort, impact over approval, you're still winning. Let's be clear, being intelligent doesn't mean being perfect. You'll still mess up, still doubt yourself, still feel insecure. But unlike many others, you'll notice those things. You'll examine them, learn from them, and that's where the growth happens. See, intelligent people don't just experience the world, they process it on multiple levels. That includes processing pain, failure, rejection. And while that can make life more intense, it also gives you more tools for healing and evolving. That's a quiet superpower. Now let's talk about contribution. If you're watching this, you've probably struggled with feeling like your ideas go nowhere. Like no one really sees what you bring to the table. And it's easy to get discouraged, to think, what's the point? Here's the point. You don't need a massive platform to make a difference. You need consistency, integrity, patience. Whether you're writing, building, designing, teaching, researching, creating art, whatever your niche is, keep doing it, even if no one's watching right now. Because intelligent contribution isn't always flashy. It's not always viral, but it builds momentum. It adds layers. And one day, those layers become the foundation of something meaningful. Let's take an example from history, Schopenhauer himself. He wrote with depth and honesty, even when no one was reading his work. For years, he was ignored, rejected, overshadowed by others. But he kept going, not because he expected fame, but because he couldn't not write. It was who he was. And now, long after his death, his ideas still resonate, still challenge us, still comfort those who feel like outsiders. That's what legacy really is. Not instant recognition, but long-term resonance. So if you feel like the world is overlooking you right now, don't stop. The work you're doing, the thoughts you're thinking, the perspective you're offering, it all matters. Even if it doesn't get a standing ovation today. And maybe, just maybe, the person you're helping most is you. Because the act of staying true to your mind, even in a world that resists it, is a radical form of self-respect. Now let's address the emotional side. Being intelligent means you're often more emotionally aware too. You feel things more deeply, you notice subtext, you pick up on things others miss. That can make relationships harder, but it can also make them more beautiful when you finally connect with someone who sees life on your level. So don't settle. Don't force yourself into friendships or relationships that feel shallow just because you're afraid to be alone. You deserve real connection. And yes, it might be rare, but that rarity makes it powerful. This is why the concept of a niche is so important. Find your tribe, no matter how small. Look for the thinkers, the feelers, the creators, the ones who ask better questions instead of repeating tired answers. These people exist, and they're looking for you too. And while you wait to find them, be that person for yourself. Challenge yourself. Encourage yourself. Build yourself up with the same energy you wish someone else would. You'll be surprised how far that takes you. So let's recap what Schopenhauer and experience teaches us. Yes, society often rejects those who think too deeply. Yes, it can feel lonely, unfair, even soul-crushing at times. But also yes, that same depth gives you the tools to live a life of authenticity, impact, and quiet power. The world might not roll out a red carpet for you, but it needs you. It needs people who refuse to accept lazy thinking, people who dare to question systems, people who value truth more than approval. It needs people like you. So don't shrink, don't hide, don't apologize for thinking differently. Instead, own your solitude, protect your mind, build your niche, and trust that your voice, though quiet, has power. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You just need to be you. Completely, unapologetically, and with purpose. Because while society may not always embrace the truly intelligent, the future is built by them. So, maybe the world will never fully embrace those who see too much, feel too deeply, or think too differently. But that's not your burden. That's your gift. It's not about fitting in, it's about standing firm, silent, steady, awake. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more content like this, and share this with someone who's always felt like they didn't quite belong. They might need to hear it. Stay thoughtful, stay awake. I'll see you in the next